Hey investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey and today I'm going to talk about 7 truths about money that I wish I had learned earlier in my life, like when I was 11 years old as opposed to later in my teenage years or in my 20s. But I'm happy I learned about these things nonetheless. And these realizations have helped me with my personal finance journey, so much so that I believe that I'm on a path toward financial freedom. So I'm much better at saving and investing my money than ever before. And also in general, if you're also looking to improve your personal finance and become wealthier in life, I think you would benefit from learning about some of these realizations that I've had. So I hope you enjoy these 7 truths about money I'm about to share with you. When I was younger, I used to worry a little bit about not having enough money because I come from a fairly modest background and my family didn't have that much money and we're just average and just getting by like most other people. So I wanted to really try to figure out how can I be on a path to becoming wealthier and not just be in debt like my parents were, and be able to have a good handle on my money and my investing and be able to be confident about how I'm investing and saving and making money. And if you're like me and used to feel a little bit anxious or worried about not having enough money and you really wanted to figure out how you could make money too, I'd love if you could please like and subscribe to my video and YouTube channel, because that's what I'm here to help you out with, because I've tried my best to figure all this out and I hope this will help you too. Number 1 is an inner scorecard or financial minimalism. And I say this because the modern day version of keeping up with the Joneses is like keeping up with the Kardashians or with Instagram and TikTok influencers. And you are almost made to believe that you need to get all these materialistic things that supposedly might make you happy, or these skin creams that will make you look more beautiful, or getting the fanciest car so you can impress your friends with a 5 Series BMW. And the truth is that you don't need to do any of that. Like, I don't know if people tell you this enough, but you don't need to live by what's called an outer scorecard to try to impress people who may or may not really care about you. And this is important because it's very easy to be tempted to try to look rich while really not having that much money. And I would rather look poor but be secretly wealthy. So that's how I try to live, by what Warren Buffett calls an inner scorecard. So that's helped me to embrace a lifestyle of financial minimalism, because I realized that having material things didn't make me more happy. And I actually realized that by having fewer things, I have less clutter in my life and less things to have to fix or deal with. And then I can be more creative to not only just get by, but also to thrive in life. And by doing that, I can set myself up to have a way more prosperous future by doing my best to save and invest as much as I can now. So that's what I would suggest is the number 1 money truth for everyone to hear, is that live as much as you can by what's called an inner scorecard, because it reflects your inner values that really matter in the end for your ultimate happiness and wealth in life. Number 2, learning how and starting to invest when you're a teenager. And usually when we're teenagers, we use our money to buy obvious things like buying clothes or forms of entertainment. But if we could learn how to really invest as a teenager, we could all become like Warren Buffett someday, potentially. And when I was a teenager, I didn't do things like, I wish I could have bought my first stock at age 13, but I'm glad I had older cousins who taught me about Roth IRAs and retirement plans and investing in general, so that I was able to open my first Roth IRA at age 18. But I waited until age 18 to buy my first stock, and I didn't know what a stock investment program was or a 401k when I was 16 and 17 working at Starbucks, but at least I participated in their stock investment program. But I didn't take advantage of a 401k because I didn't understand enough at that time. So I had my first 401k when I was in my early 20s. But that shouldn't stop you from trying to start learning what all of these financial investing vehicles might mean, so that we can start investing as soon as possible. And if we don't start investing, at least learning about it so that we can be prepared when we're finally ready to invest. And for sure, it's definitely scary, the prospect of potentially losing money in our investments, but that could also be one of the best teachers we could possibly have. Like, let's say you buy your first meme stock and you're super excited because everybody is saying it's going to the moon, but then all of a sudden the price drops and you panic and sell it, and then you have a loss. And then you think, maybe I shouldn't make that kind of mistake again, because I was just riding the hype train, and then I come to realize that maybe that stock wasn't the best thing to put my money into. So then you won't make that mistake again, and you'll do a better job of learning so you make better investing decisions as you go along. And life is a very iterative process. We all make mistakes. It's inevitable. But the thing that you need to realize and do is to always keep learning from your mistakes, and ideally from others' mistakes vicariously, so you never have to make those mistakes yourself. And that's what I'd suggest, is to learn as much as you can. And if you don't know where to start, I highly recommend the book Invested by Danielle Town and Phil Town. And you could also check out their free podcast, Invested. And that's also an amazing place to start learning how to invest. Number 3, knowing your money-making options. And this is about learning bankable skills that you don't necessarily need to go to college for. And for example, you could do an apprenticeship or learn a skilled trade and have an occupation that didn't require you to spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars with a college or post-college degree, and you could learn a skill that can make you a pretty good salary that could be in areas of what we typically think of in trade skills like plumbing, electricity, or cybersecurity. And these are the types of skills that don't necessarily require a college degree. Like, you could spend a few thousands of dollars in a certificate program and be able to work right away, or become a real estate agent like Graham Stephan did and become wealthy that way. But it doesn't mean that you always have to go to college. Like, I think in America, we're conditioned to believe that we have to go to college, otherwise we won't be able to get a good job. But if you know what your options are for making money, you can explore different kinds of careers so that you get an occupation that you would be happy with. And if you don't want to work for someone else, you could always start your own business. And that's one of the best ways that you could make money in life. So knowing your options for making money is really important. And for example, let's say you get a cybersecurity background, and the kinds of skills that get you entry-level jobs in cybersecurity, making you anywhere between $50,000 and over $100,000 per year. And that would be pretty awesome. And then the other thing I want to say about knowing your money-making options is finding ways to self-improve without having to pay extra for it. So for example, when I was a teenager, I don't think I nearly appreciated my library system as much as I do now as an adult. And being able to access books that teach me a lot of skills for free is amazing. So it teaches us that we don't necessarily need to pay in order to learn and self-improve. We can take advantage of YouTube for learning all kinds of new skills, in our libraries, and getting books for self-improvement or learning how to invest. And be careful if you opt to go for courses that you have to pay for. You should carefully evaluate them to see if you're getting the kind of value that you're expecting, and that it will help you get to the kind of outcomes you're looking to achieve. Number 4, get as much financial aid and scholarships that you don't have to pay back to anyone as much as you can. If you're planning to go to college like I did, and I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and I know it can be very overwhelming when you're in high school and you're dealing with sports and SATs and academics and a job and FAFSA and trying to figure out how much your family can help you to afford college. And with that in mind, it's imperative to try to go for as much scholarships as you can, because it's hard enough to have to go to college and then maybe end up with student loans, that you set yourself back a lot if you don't have as much financial support going into it. And also trying to be realistic with what your family can really help you with. Like, I was fortunate that I was able to get enough scholarships, and my family was able to help me enough that I had very little student loans when I graduated college, but nonetheless, I still had student loans. And maybe if I tried harder and went above and beyond in high school trying to get more scholarships, I could have been like how Ramit Sethi of the I Will Teach You to Be Rich fame was able to get over $100,000 of scholarships, so that his college degree was basically paid for. And I wish that I could have done that in retrospect. So try as hard as you can and apply as much as humanly possible. I know it's hard considering you also got to worry about applying to colleges, but it can really help you. And this helped me to know that there was no way that my family was going to be able able to afford a private college education. So I was happy that I was able to go to public school, because if you think about it, if you even have to pay $19,000 a semester for tuition, room and board and fees, and then that adds up to $38,000 over the course of a year, and you multiply that by 4, that's around $150,000, and that's the equivalent of getting an average price house in Ohio. So think about that, what it really means to be able to afford $150,000 in college costs, and you'll be able to make better decisions if you really carefully weigh the full cost, and then you'll make much more efforts in trying to get as much financial support as you can, so that you're less worried about having to pay for college, and you can better focus on getting as much academic value and extracurricular value out of college as possible. Number 5, avoiding mediocre investment options. When I was a teenager, I didn't all know what my parents were fully invested in for me and my siblings, and they did their best, like investing in savings bonds or certificates of deposit and mutual funds. And then I realized that some of these are really not the best places to be investing money in. And for example, with savings bonds, they had very low amounts of savings rates, and nowadays it's way worse. So I wouldn't even bother with savings bonds and a lot of treasury bonds these days. And I try to stay away from corporate debt, because corporate bonds could be a little bit hectic with some of their high yields that could be in danger if some of these corporate bonds go bust. So that's why some high yield bonds are also known as junk bonds. So I'm glad my parents never did those. But they did do things like certificates of deposit, and those weren't bad. Before, there used to be maybe a few percentage points for maybe 6 months to a year, but nowadays these rates are all the way down to something like 0.7 to 0.75% for at least a year or two. So that's a long time to lock up your money for a very mediocre investment return on a certificate of deposit. And with mutual funds, those are hardly any better, because I realized when my parents handed me over this mutual fund for my savings for my college education or my future in general, I realized that this mutual fund had a higher than I expected expense ratio. And that's where we realized that there's a bunch of low cost index funds that can have little to zero fees. So nowadays, you don't even have to be paying something like 1 to 2% in an expensive mutual fund, but you could be paying something as low as 0.03% in a low-cost index fund, and that's a way better way to invest than having to put in an expensive, actively managed mutual fund. So stay away from those if you can. As well as, I personally like stock picking these days, so I don't really do too much of index funds right now, but maybe if stocks go on sale, I might invest in some of those in a little bit. But for the most part, I like investing in individual companies, much like how Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger do. So that's what I'd suggest, is try your best to stay away from mediocre investments. Number 6, avoid as much debt as you can, unless it's a necessary evil, like having to get student loans or a mortgage if you're buying a house. And as much as possible, try to stay away from unnecessary debt in things like credit cards or car loans and other kinds of things that you might want to finance. Like, it's really tempting to get an online credit card for that favorite store of yours, and you know what I'm talking about with Amazon and eBay, where you could have a $50 credit and you don't have to pay for 6 months. But as tempting as that is, try your best to not cave into these options that try to tempt you into just spending a lot of money on things that probably don't matter that much. And if it really does matter, then go for it. And if you really get the kind of use that you need out of certain items, there's nothing wrong with that. But just be mindful about what kind of things you're willing to get into debt for. And for example, just because I can buy or finance something doesn't mean that I should. And when we think about something like buying a car, I'd rather pay $10,000 in cash for a car than have to get into a long-term commitment, even if I qualify for 0% APR or interest rate for 6 or 7 years. And as tempting as that may sound, it can lead me to having to pay way more money in the long run for a car that is just a depreciating asset. So if a car is worth $30,000, it's actually not that worth it to me. I'd rather just get a pre-owned certified used car that only cost me $10,000 as opposed to buying it new for $30,000. But over the course of many years, like 6 to 10 years, I'm paying a lot of money when I could have been investing that difference of $20,000 in the stock market and making way more money than an asset that's just sitting in my driveway. So you don't need to do that if you don't want to be in more debt than you have to be, and you can save a lot more money that way. Number 7, extra warranties aren't usually worth it in my experience. Like when I bought a pre-owned certified used car from a dealership, I found that I didn't need to spend an extra $1,000 on another 3 years or 36,000 miles of an extended warranty on that car because it was a reliable Japanese car. And for example, usually a lot of cars come with an original factory warranty of up to 100,000 miles or 10 years, like this Kia example. But in general, I realized that unless you find a major defect that makes a car lemon in the first year or two of its life, for the most part, if I'm buying a pre-owned certified car that is at least a year or 2 or 3 years old, then most likely it has already passed the window of when it would be considered a lemon. And usually there's only 1% or 150,000 cars each year that are a lemon. So you don't really have to worry about the likelihood of getting a lemon car as long as you're getting a car that's been verified to not have major issues by somewhere like a dealership. Like I wouldn't just go to some sketchy used car place and then expect that there won't be issues. Like you got to make sure that the car is in an okay shape, as well as because of so much technological obsolescence, I don't believe in getting extra warranties for my tech products. Like for my Apple or my Windows products, I don't feel like getting the extra computer or phone warranties that there are. Like I could easily get Apple Care, but I don't tend to break my devices, so that's not usually an issue for me to have to worry about if I'm gonna break the glass of my phone or that my computer is gonna fall in the bathtub. Like I'm not usually prone to those sorts of situations. But this is where you got to know yourself. You have to see if getting Apple Care or other kinds of extended warranties is worth it for you. And it all boils down to knowing yourself and how you behave. Those were the 7 money truths I wanted to share with you, but I've actually got a bonus for you today in that I wanted to tell you to not ever let anyone tell you that you'll never be wealthy or rich or that you'll only ever make as much money as your parents did, because you can choose your money destiny. I believe in the power of us being able to develop that for ourselves, as well as you should carefully think about who you allow to influence your money decisions and your attitudes and financial behaviors. And this can make a huge difference in your financial outcomes in life. But I believe that we can be prosperous if we're creative and tenacious and are able to position ourselves for the best possible financial future. And if you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like and subscribe. And I wish you well on your journey to achieving financial independence. Till next time.